Ooh, that's a big 300. Hey guys, this is my review for Supernatural Season 14, Episode 13, the 300th episode of this show. Despite my differences for this show, I definitely have to congratulate Jared, Jensen, and the crew, and just the entire production that they've made it this long. It's an incredible feat. It is a milestone in which these guys can all be proud of having made this show last this long. It's a pretty big milestone in terms of television in general. However, this wasn't written by Andrew Dabb. Admittedly, the 300th episode isn't a big climactic episode. It's actually a very personal episode. To be honest, I don't know what the 100th episode of the show was. I don't remember it being a big woo point of it. I do remember what the 200th episode was. This one, I was interested to see what they would do. Obviously, there had been a lot of talk about Jeffrey Dean Morgan coming back, and there actually was a little bit of a different person coming back too, is Zachariah, the actor who played him. This episode, from a concept idea, is a cool idea. It is great to see Jeffrey Dean Morgan back on screen. The instant that he's on screen again, the tone just changes. And it is amazing to watch. And his acting is still pretty darn good. When he hears Mary's voice, that was a bit of an emotional moment for me, I'll admit. Now, I know there's going to be a shit ton of comments just talking about all the tear-jerking moments in this episode. And honestly, a majority of this plays out like a Grey's Anatomy episode. There are some good moments. There are some fantastic personal moments. It doesn't help that Robert Singer can't block to save his life. He just uses the same two different shots over and over again, but there's two in particular that I want to really talk about, and the first one is when Sam and John have their own personal conversation. For those of you who've been watching the show ever since the beginning, you will understand that Sam and John had a rough relationship. They never really had the closure that they wanted. Yeah, there was that look when John, as a ghost, came back and helped them defeat Yellow Eyes, and that was a great moment. And Sam and John, in a look, basically resolved their differences and kind of forgave each other. And this is them getting to actually say what they wanted. And I'll admit, it was really good to see. I actually think that while Jared's a little bit twitchy, I find that he's a bit twitchy with his acting in this episode. But otherwise, the relationship between him and John in that conversation was very good. And then I started to notice something. John repeats himself basically 5 times throughout this whole episode. John has a total of 6 scenes in this entire episode, 5 of which are all within the bunker, which probably means they filmed all of his shit in 2 days. But the thing you'll start to notice is with Andrew Dabb's writing, is he can't really go anywhere with this. He can't find a way to take a creative angle to it. So what he does is he basically just has John repeat himself 5 times in a row. I'm not saying this is an awful thing. It was cool to see John interact with his sons, to re-interact with Mary, and to basically have this second chance to just say goodbye, make amends, and to tell the boys how he feels. It was good, but when you hear the same conversation being recycled over and over again, it's not exactly the most entertaining thing. And like I said, because Bryan Singer can't set up anything in the realm of an interesting shot, it's a bit bland. That means that you're relying entirely on your actors to make a very boring shot interesting. Jensen knows how to do that. He actually knows how to do that because, oddly enough, of his soap opera days. The final scene in which the 4 of them are together and they're saying goodbye, Jensen knows what he's doing. He knows how to act in this scene. He knows that there's limited camera movement, but he shows it all in his face. And he's not twitching around like Jared. Jared is going fucking nuts at the end of this episode. I understand that he's trying to convey emotion, that he is the more emotional of the two, but it just looks silly. And then Mary's just kind of there. But Jensen knows how to make the scene, at least from his perspective, it's his work. He knows how to do it well. And so does Jeffrey Dean Morgan, even though Jeffrey's just basically repeating himself again for the 7th time. Aside from the episode itself, it's a whole time paradox. Admittedly, the first 20 minutes of this episode is a fucking mess, in my opinion. Again, it's Andrew Dabb, who can't hold on to an idea to save his life, so he's throwing in all these different ideas and all these different elements, and a lot of logic doesn't make any sense. And also, thinking about the logic of this episode, so this is supposed to be John. He's pulled from this different reality, this different universe, into this world, but he is now John from 2003. Okay, that makes sense. However, Zachariah and Castiel arrive, but they are from the alternative universe, but they don't have the mindset of this universe. So I don't understand the logic of that idea, and you can definitely see that the budget entirely went into getting Jeffrey Dean Morgan back on this episode. The story itself, not exactly the most interesting. It's all about the characters and about these interactions, which for the most part are done well, if yet repetitive. Basically, you have a terrible writer and a very mediocre director working on the same episode, and you have these actors who are trying to act their heart out to make up for these two fuckheads. So in my opinion, the 300th episode, it was cool to see Jeffrey Dean Morgan back, but this is not a stellar episode. This is not a standout episode. I will remember the 200th episode for its wit, its writing, its acting, and its kind of homage to the show. Far more than the 300th episode. The 300th episode, the only thing that it's got going is Jeffrey Dean Morgan coming back. Now, you could say that's the point of the episode, which yes, it is, but you have to make it more than just a character's cameo. You gotta make it more than that, otherwise you're nothing more than a soap opera. I know I'm going to piss some people off with that thought, but just imagine it. Were we just watching a Supernatural episode, or were we watching a soap opera? Now, I know you will say, well, there's a lot of character in the Supernatural. There used to be, until they dragged this show out. I like the idea of it. I love seeing Jeffrey Dean Morgan back. Jensen and Jeffrey, like, they picked up right where they left off. It was incredible to see how these two melded back to what they once were when they started doing this show. Mary, I just never have liked her character ever since she came back. Jared has a great opening. And actually, his conversation with his mom is not too bad either. That was the second part I liked, because that actually had some ramifications to it. But he just gets a little twitchy. It's a little weird. I know I'm going to sound a little bit mean there, but I don't know. Jared I think he over-emoted in this episode. So in the end, in terms of an achievement, in terms of how long the show's gone and reaching this milestone, very good on these guys. A great achievement for the show and a great achievement for the boys. But in terms of an episode, in terms of its quality, it is nothing more than subpar. Yes, you have a great actor and character coming back, but you have A, shit writing, B, lazy directing, and C, a narrative that doesn't mean anything. I know they haven't gotten John back for any more episodes, but it would be a great surprise if he did come back for some other ones, but it won't work. It's impossible. And if this wasn't just a one-off idea, again, Dabb, you have an idea sometimes that's not bad, but I swear you just took this straight from a fan fiction story. I swear to God, I bet I could find one in which you ripped this off of. It was great to watch it with my dad. My dad and I have been watching this show ever since it started. Admittedly, my dad actually stopped watching it after season 12. He couldn't take how terrible season 12 was anymore. But it was cool for my dad and I to just sit there and watch this show again together when we had started watching this over 14 years ago. So in the end, my rating for the 300th episode of Supernatural, I'm going to piss people off. It's a 3 out of 7. Yeah, it's got a 3 in it. 300, 3. Honestly, it's okay. It's nothing special. The only reason why it's special is because Jeffrey Dean Morgan's back. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. Please leave your comments below. I'm very interested to see what you guys have to say about this episode. This is probably the longest review I've ever done about a Supernatural episode since, I think, a season review. So I'm interested to see what you guys have to say. Did you guys think it was good? What did you guys think of my thoughts on the revolving kind of dialogue for John? Does anyone else notice how terrible the blocking is in this episode? And does anyone else feel that this was a okay idea, but something that's just not going to sit well And what about the ending, too? What did everyone think of the acting? Anyways, let me know in the comments below. Very interested to see what you guys would say. And doing a shout out once again to Camp Death 3 in 2D. This film comes out on February 15th. I've been saying it wrong for the last little while. Anyways, it was a Canadian feature that I got to see a preview of, and it was made up here, so I'm obviously doing a shout out for our Canadian bros. And you guys can find it on Amazon Prime on February 15th. I'll leave a link for their Facebook page in the description below. Also, keep an eye on this channel because hopefully we're going to have something very interesting coming this weekend. Anyways, see you guys next time.